A reading from the book of Joshua. The Lord said to Joshua, "Today I have removed the reproach of Egypt from you." While the Israelites were encamped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, they celebrated the Passover on the evening of the 14th of the month. On the day after the Passover, they ate of the produce of the land in the form of unleavened cakes and parched grain. On that same day after the Passover, on which they ate of the produce of the land, the manna ceased. No longer was there manna for the Israelites, who that year ate of the yield of the land of Canaan. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
At the launch of Apollo 11, the Saturn V rocket used just over 7.6 million pounds of thrust to launch those astronauts up and out into the atmosphere into space. Now that is a lot of force on top of that 300-foot rocket that you're sitting up there in the command module. I'm sure as cramped as can be, and you're being skyrocketed up into space. And I'm sure on their return from the moon, if let's say they went with their family to the amusement park, any roller coaster would have just put them to sleep. They would have been completely bored with the best that an amusement park could throw at them. In the Exodus, during the first Passover, the Israelites were similarly shot off with a lot of velocity, shot off on a journey. Through Moses' instruction, the Lord commanded the people to eat the Passover with loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly. It is the Passover of the Lord, shot out, launched on a mission. So there is a commonality between the Exodus and the rocket, Apollo 11 rocket in flight. This commonality is a goal. There is a goal behind it. In Houston, Mission Control had a large team of people getting the trajectory, the telemetry data, so that the rocket could get to the moon on the right trajectory. They were going to the moon. It wouldn't have made sense if they launched the rocket with 7.6 million pounds of thrust just anywhere. That wouldn't have made sense at all. So they were going to the moon. In a similar way, God had a plan for the Israelites. They were going to the promised land. God had a plan. And even when they complained in the desert that they have just been brought out here to die in the desert, God reminds them that He has a plan for them. So now let's look at the journey. You know, it's an interesting aspect of the Saturn V rocket is that it has stages. And the stages, as the gas in the rocket they're dropped. As the gas is used, the stages are dropped into the ocean. That's why they launch out of Florida, so that as the rocket goes up, they can leave the different stages. So also the manna in the desert was a stage in the journey of the Israelites as they made their way to the promised land. So just as each stage of the rocket was essential for the mission of reaching the moon, so the manna was not to be overlooked. It's a key piece in salvation history because it taught the Israelites how to trust in God's providence. Likewise, we hunger not just for God to help us overcome the obstacles of life, but to truly abide with Jesus, the bread of life, the true manna which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. So in each stage, we focus on our target, on our goal, shooting for the moon. As we labor like Mission Control, focusing on the data of each phase, we do so with a view of reaching our goal. Now, what is our Christian life without our goal of fulfillment in the kingdom of God? As St. Paul says, if for this life only we have hoped, we are the most to be pitied of all. Jesus fulfills this analogy here of the journey by being both the way and the destination. Jesus is both our manna and the produce in the land of Canaan. The Eucharist is both the source and summit of our faith. Jesus is the one who greatly desired to eat the Passover with his disciples before he suffered. He gave himself and loved us to the end to show us the way to lead us back to the Father. And this, Jesus as the way, gives meaning to our suffering, gives meaning to our times of transition, which we certainly feel now in this house. When we feel the wound of pouring ourselves out into the stage of the rocket that is dislodged from the ship, we can trust that it is not done so in vain, that love is not in vain, love never fails. When we risk loving others and give them our hearts and have to say goodbye, this is very painful, but it is not wasted, because Jesus is with us on the journey. So we keep our eyes fixed on eternity, which means that what we do at this stage of our mission matters all the more. Let us keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the leader and perfecter of our faith. Jesus, the Alpha and Omega, God's messenger and message, our way to salvation and surest goal of fulfillment in the kingdom of God. Fully human, like us in all things but sin, fully God, raising us to life forever. Lord, as we hunger in the desert and offer ourselves through the many stages of the journey, remind us that our hearts are restless until they rest in you.
Dear